On June 28, 1914, a 19-year-old failed assassin walked away from the biggest moment of his life. The mission was over. The target was alive. Europe was at peace. Then a driver took a wrong turn, and within 4 minutes, 2 gunshots echoed through Sarajevo. Within 37 days, every major power in Europe was at war. Within 4 years, 20 million people were dead. And it all happened because the assassin had been standing in exactly the right place at exactly the wrong time. His name was Gavrilo Princip. This is the story of the mistake that started World War I. To understand how 2 bullets could start a world war, you need to understand Europe in 1914. On the surface, the continent looked peaceful. Underneath, every major power was preparing for war. For decades, Europe's empires had built a web of military alliances, agreements that promised, if one nation went to war, its allies would follow. By 1914, the continent had split into 2 armed camps. On one side, France, Russia, and Britain. On the other, Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Italy. The idea was supposed to prevent war, because if attacking one country meant fighting half of Europe, nobody would risk it. Instead, Europe had created a system where 1 death could become 20 million. That death was waiting in Sarajevo, and it was in the hands of a 19-year-old who should never have changed history. Gavrilo Princip was a Bosnian Serb living under Austro-Hungarian rule. He was small, sick, poor. He suffered from tuberculosis and had already accepted he probably would not live long. He had even failed the physical exam to join the Serbian military. Too weak, too thin, too fragile. But what Princip lacked physically, he made up for with ideology. He became part of Young Bosnia, a nationalist movement that wanted to break Austro-Hungarian control over the Balkans. And through Young Bosnia, he became connected to something far more dangerous: the Black Hand, a Serbian secret society whose motto was union or death. Their target was Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, who was scheduled to visit Sarajevo on June 28, 1914. To Serbian nationalists, the visit felt like an insult. The Black Hand decided to answer it with assassination. There were 6 assassins waiting along the Archduke's route that morning. 6 men, 6 weapons, 1 open-topped car moving slowly through the streets of Sarajevo. The first assassin lost his nerve. The second froze completely. Then came the third, Nedeljko Čabrinović. He pulled out a grenade, struck the detonator against a lamppost, and hurled it directly at the Archduke's car. He missed. The grenade bounced off the folded roof and exploded beneath the vehicle behind it. The blast tore into the street, wounded several people, and sent the motorcade speeding toward the town hall. Čabrinović swallowed a cyanide pill and jumped into the nearby river to avoid capture. Neither worked. The cyanide only made him vomit, and the river was barely deep enough to cover his shoes. He was arrested immediately. At this point, history should have survived the day. The assassination had failed. Franz Ferdinand was alive. The remaining assassins began disappearing into the crowd, and Gavrilo Princip gave up. He walked through Sarajevo toward Schiller's Delicatessen, near Franz Josef Street. By then, the opportunity was gone. The Archduke had escaped. The mission was over. Princip stood outside the Delicatessen, trying to decide what to do next. Then history came back for him. After the failed bombing attempt, Franz Ferdinand continued to the town hall, shaken, angry, but alive. When the ceremony ended, his aides made a new decision. The Archduke would visit the wounded officers recovering in the hospital. A new route was supposed to be taken through the city, but nobody told the driver. That single communication failure changed the 20th century. The lead car turned onto Franz Josef Street, the original route, before anyone realized the mistake. General Oskar Pocherek immediately saw the problem. "This is the wrong way," he said. "We have to go back." The driver hit the brakes. The car slowed, stopped, and began trying to reverse. It stopped directly outside Schiller's Delicatessen. Gavrilo Princip was standing less than 5 feet away. Years later, Princip would describe the moment not as triumph, but disbelief. He had already accepted failure, and now the man he had been sent to kill was sitting motionless in front of him. No crowd between them, no speed, no escape. Princip stepped forward and drew a .32 caliber FN model 1910 pistol. He fired twice. The first bullet struck Archduke Franz Ferdinand in the neck. The second struck his wife Sophie in the abdomen. Both would be dead within the hour. Princip was immediately tackled by the crowd and beaten before police reached him. But because he was only 19 years old, Austro-Hungarian law prevented his execution. Instead, he received 20 years in prison. He would die of tuberculosis in 1918, 4 years after the assassination, weighing less than 40 kilograms. He never saw what his 2 bullets would do to the world. What followed was 37 days of catastrophic political failure. Austria-Hungary blamed Serbia for the assassination and issued an ultimatum designed to be rejected. Serbia accepted almost all of the demands. Austria-Hungary declared war anyway. Russia mobilized to defend Serbia. Germany warned Russia to stand down. Russia refused. Germany declared war on Russia. France was allied with Russia. Germany declared war on France next. But Germany faced a problem. France's eastern border was heavily defended. So Germany chose a faster route. They invaded through neutral Belgium. Britain had guaranteed Belgian neutrality decades earlier. When German troops crossed the border, Britain issued an ultimatum. Germany ignored it. On August 4th, 1914, Britain declared war on Germany. In just 37 days, nearly every major power in Europe had been dragged into war. Not because of one teenager alone, but because Europe had spent decades building a system designed to turn one conflict into all of them. And once the machine started moving, nobody could stop it. The leaders of Europe believed the war would end quickly. They imagined glory, national pride, a short conflict. Instead, the world entered industrialized slaughter, machine guns, artillery, poison gas, entire generations erased in mud-filled trenches, 4 years, 20 million dead, 21 million wounded. The Ottoman Empire collapsed. The Russian Empire collapsed. The Austro-Hungarian Empire collapsed. The map of Europe was rewritten. And the peace treaty imposed on Germany after the war created the political chaos and humiliation that helped Adolf Hitler rise to power 2 decades later, which meant the consequences of those 2 gunshots did not end with World War I. They helped shape World War II. 2 bullets, 2 world wars, over 100 million dead, all traced back to a wrong turn in Sarajevo. There is another version of history where Gavrilo Princip walks away that morning, where the driver follows the correct route, where Franz Ferdinand survives. Maybe Europe still goes to war eventually. Maybe it doesn't. Nobody can know. But what we do know is this. The modern world was shaped by a driver who didn't know the route. History does not always turn on great leaders or carefully planned decisions. Sometimes it turns on tiny accidents, a missed instruction, a stalled engine, a man standing in the wrong place at the perfect moment. And that is what makes this story terrifying. Not just that one assassination started a world war, but that the fate of millions rested on something so absurdly fragile. Do you think World War I was inevitable, or did one wrong turn really change history? Subscribe for the next story. The vault is open.